All this means that the work that you do on this exercise is of a high quality, and you can do a lot of it, and you can do it very often. And it's all to very little detriment on the body in the process. What's up, guys? Enkiri here, and today I want to talk about an exercise that I've known about for a long time, but only recently have I really started giving it the love and attention that it deserves. And that exercise is the inverted row. The inverted row is the much less glamorized cousin of the chin-up, and it's an exercise that you very rarely see anyone performing in the gym, which is a pretty big shame because it's actually probably one of the best rowing variations that you can focus on for overall back development. And funny enough, it's actually gotten some more attention in recent months because of the pandemic and all the gyms being closed and whatnot. But even then, it has still mostly been prescribed as a relatively sissy variation for you to do in your living room with your feet resting on the floor and with no additional weight being added to the movement or whatever. And this is fine at first if you aren't in great shape at the moment. But when the exercise is performed this way, you will outgrow it very quickly. And with all the gyms starting to reopen in recent weeks, it's time for us to make a few small modifications and turn this sissy exercise into a highly productive, staple rowing variation that should be a mainstay in your training routine. And soon enough, it just might become your favorite rowing variation of all if you use my tips from today. So I'm going to give you guys 5 quick tips on the inverted row so that you guys can implement this classic but underrated exercise into your training routines in the most optimal and productive fashion. So let's get to it. I alluded to this tip in the intro, but this is first and foremost the most important technical modification that you can make to the inverted row to make it more challenging and more productive overall. When your feet are resting on the floor, your body is invariably going to be at least somewhat more vertical in orientation when you're hanging from the barbell. But the line of pull that we're after here is horizontal. That means that in an instance like this, you won't be pulling very much of your body weight at all when you perform the row. And it's just too easy this way. However, if you elevate the feet to make the body parallel to the ground, then all of a sudden, thanks to the magic of gravity, you will be forced to overcome much more of your own body weight with each rep that you do. This makes the exercise much more challenging and much more productive overall for anyone who possesses even just a small amount of strength relative to their own body weight. To make the most of this modification, you'll want to prop your feet up onto a box that, depending on the length of your arms, is either roughly the same height as the bar that you're holding onto or just a little bit lower than it. This means that when you're hanging onto the bar with your arms fully extended, your body will actually be angled back slightly. And then when you reach the fully contracted position at the top of the row, your body will pretty much be perfectly parallel with the floor. This is the position that you should be shooting for at the bottom and then at the top of the row. Still though, even with the feet propped up like this, most meatheads will be able to crank out 20 or 30 or even 40 or more reps on this exercise with body weight alone. So, to maximize the long-term strength and hypertrophic benefits here, we still need to make things a little bit more challenging. And that leads me to tip number 2. No exercise would be useful in the long term if we didn't have a way to progressively overload it. Creating metabolic fatigue with ultra high reps is all well and good. It gives you a hell of a pump and it can be a useful adjunct method for building some muscle, but it won't do very much for building strength. To do that, to build strength, you need to gradually overcome greater and greater resistance in a measurable and predictable and reliable fashion. And the best way to do that is to simply add some damn weight to the exercise. Now, the reason that I avoided the inverted row for so long these past years is because it's super easy for me, right? I can probably bang out 40 or even 50 reps with body weight alone. And I felt like focusing on chin-ups, just for example, which I could load the weights up onto with a dipping belt, was a better use of my time and my energy. However, chin-ups are a vertical pulling exercise, and inverted rows, as I've shown them to you guys here today, are a pure horizontal pull. Now, in the past, I've talked about how I avoid traditional freestanding rowing variations like bent over rows most of the time because they create a large amount of lower back fatigue, and personally, I'd rather save my lower back for exercises that are more in line with my own goals, such as deadlifts and power cleans and high pulls. I still program bent over rows and freestanding rowing variations for clients depending on their goals, their own personal goals, but for me, I tend to avoid them. Still though, even if there are some similarities and crossover aspects between my high pulls and my power cleans and whatnot, none of those exercises really satisfy that horizontal pulling requirement that I'm talking about here. And I've got to get my horizontal pulling volume from somewhere, right? Or else I, in my own training program, I'm neglecting a vital movement pattern of the body. Historically, to fill that void, I've focused a lot on face pulls and seated cable rows, which are both okay, right? But they're not quite ideal. No matter what you do, you can only make those exercises so challenging. So more recently, I've shifted my focus onto other horizontal pulling variations like seal rows and chest supported rowing variations. And I think that those exercises are a couple rungs up the totem pole from the face pulls and the cable rows that I just mentioned, but still, even better than all of these exercises is the inverted row. You just need a good way to load it. And that's where my adjustable weight vest came into play. I recently purchased a loadable weight vest from Enkiri Fitness, which I've been using primarily for 3 different exercises. Those 3 exercises are weighted push-ups, weighted box jumps, and you guessed it, weighted inverted rows. So I started off just using the vest as a way to hold a plate, a 45-pound plate, steady on my chest. And then I went up to a plate and a quarter, and then eventually I worked my way up to 2 45-pound plates. But along the way, I realized something. You don't even need the vest at all. So now I just lie down on the floor, I stack the plates on my chest, and then I secure them to my torso using an old knee wrap. It's perfect. The elastic keeps the weight snug to your body and in perfect position. You don't even need to retie the wrap with every set. You just tie it up once and then you can slip it on and off from there on out. And that completely solves the loading problem for this exercise. So far I've gone up to 90 pounds, like I said, for repeat sets of 10 reps, but I will be experimenting with heavier and heavier loads in the coming months, and I'll keep you guys posted on that. And I'm confident that I will be able to strap as much weight to my chest as I will ever need to make sure that this exercise remains a productive staple in my training routine for the foreseeable future. Another great way to maximize your gains from the inverted row is to increase the frequency. I started off working it just once a week, along with chest supported rows later in the week, and then shortly after that I decided to experiment with an additional inverted row slot at the end of the week as well, bumping my frequency up to twice a week and sandwiching the chest supported rows in between both of the inverted row sessions. In the future, I might even bump that up to 3 times a week. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see what happens. The point really though is that this exercise is actually incredibly easy to recover from. Dr. Mike Israetel often talks about the stimulus to fatigue ratio. How much productive work does a certain exercise yield versus how much of a recovery deficit does it create? In the case of the inverted row, the stimulus seems to be pretty goddamn high. Personally, I can probably create a stronger contraction across the majority of the major muscles in my back using this exercise than I can using any other rowing variation. And the training effect on the lats actually seems to rival that of my heavy weighted chin-ups that I've loved so much for the past 10 years. Yet in spite of all that stimulation, the fatigue created by the exercise seems to be nearly non-existent. The muscles recover from it very quickly. The joint stress is minimal to non-existent. In my experience, there's far less stress on the elbows during an inverted row than there is during a chin-up, just for example. There's no residual fatigue on the lower back due to the orientation of the row, and the systemic stress on the body is pretty low as well. All this means that the work that you do on this exercise is of a high quality, and you can do a lot of it, and you can do it very often, and it's all to very little detriment on the body in the process. And in time, this is going to lead to big gains in both size and strength across the musculature of the back. Now, If you do start to toy around with higher frequencies like I'm talking about here, you'll also want to begin using some different loading protocols as well, which leads me to tip number 4. As I noted a minute ago, I'm currently performing this exercise twice a week, right? And anytime that you're doing an exercise more than one time in a given microcycle, it can be very, very useful to vary the load and vary the sets and the reps from session to session within that microcycle. Now, this basically gives you 2 separate and distinct progressions to work on at the same time, all in the same exercise. Typically, the way that you would do this is to have one session that's a bit heavier and another session that's a bit more volume oriented. In my case, I'm currently doing the heavier day first in the week, right? Where I'm working with sets of 10 reps with an additional 90 pounds. I'm taking my time there with increasing the weight right now, but in this slot, I'll eventually allow the reps to drop down much, much lower than this, much, much lower than 10. How low that you're willing to go here is dependent on the exercise at hand though. And in the case of the inverted row, you don't want to go too low because it's really still an event that lends itself more to repetition than to maxing out. So sets of 2 or 3 reps are probably not going to be that productive, but I do think there will be plenty of productive work to be had here, even potentially as low as that 4 to 6 rep range. And then for my volume oriented session, I'm keeping the weight pretty light and I'm just performing multiple AMRAP sets in a pyramid fashion. So for example, my last session, I started with 25 pounds where I performed a set of 25 reps. Then I went up to 45 pounds and I performed a set of 20 reps. And then I bumped up to 70 pounds and I performed a set of 15 reps. And then from there, I dropped back down to 25 pounds and I went up the ladder one more time for a total of 6 working sets and 100 plus total reps. And during this session, as the program progresses, I'll focus less on the loading here, right? And more on simply beating those rep PRs at any given weight. And in time, I will make small jumps to the working weights, but they'll remain static for longer here than during the heavy session because the primary focus here is always going to be on the volume and just accruing a shitload of high quality reps throughout the session cumulatively. Loading is secondary here, and I have my other heavy day to focus on making the loading the primary variable. And finally, we're on to tip number 5. Try out some different grips. Experiment with different grips when you do this exercise. There are a multitude of options here, but the 3 basic grips are pronated, which is your hands facing away from you, supinated, which is your hands facing towards you, and neutral. Beyond that, you can go wide grip pronated or medium grip pronated. I don't think you should do close grip pronated, but you can do close grip supinated, medium grip supinated, and wide grip supinated, along with neutral where you can go close or wide if you have a bar that allows for that. So there are plenty of options here. Neutral grip with a medium width is personally my favorite, and it's probably the most balanced grip overall as well. I also find it to be the strongest variation of all. Supinated grip increases the overall biceps activation, and it seems to be a bit stronger than the pronated grip. However, the biceps also seem to fatigue pretty quickly during this exercise, which lends the pronated grip better to higher rep performances than the supinated grip. And this is all based on my personal experience, but I think that the best bet for everyone is to experiment with several different grips, find a few that feel good for you and that you like, and then rotate between them. You can use one grip on your heavy day and one grip on your volume day. That's what I'm doing. Or you can also use the same grip for an entire mesocycle and then switch to a different grip on the next mesocycle. The possibilities are practically endless here. Just don't let yourself get stuck in a rut. Keep making progress somehow and some way and continually make minor tweaks as you go along and you'll be all set. And I actually have a quick bonus tip here for you guys before I close the video, and that is to use a static hold in the fully contracted position of the row. I don't even use this little tip enough myself, but I certainly plan to make it a point to use it more often in the future because it can drastically increase the intensity of the contraction in the back muscles while also increasing the total time under tension as well. And it's a neat little trick to help eke out some additional strength gains without needing to actually increase the external loading. So if you're stuck in a plateau, little tweaks like this can be just the thing that you need to break out of it it and spur on some new gains. A quick 2 to 3 count in your head here should get the job done pretty well. Again, just don't let yourself get stuck in a rut. There are plenty of options when it comes to manipulating this exercise, and adding in a static hold at the top is just another useful tool to keep in your toolbox. So there you have it, guys. My best tips to take the classic inverted row and convert it from a SISSY last resort exercise to the staple rowing variation, what should be the staple rowing variation in your training program. In my opinion, these tips put the inverted row either on the same level as the weighted chin-up or even fucking higher than it. And as such, it should be given at least the same amount of respect in your training program as well. And if you do that, then I think that you'll begin to see your overall back strength and overall back development skyrocket up to the next level pretty damn quickly. And that's all I got for today, guys. Please be sure to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and definitely leave me some love in the comments down below. And if you're interested in online coaching, be sure to shoot me an email at enkiri.elite@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to pass some more information your way. Or simply visit my website, www.enkirielitefitness.com, for more details. Keep training hard, and I'll catch you guys next time.